What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Living Electric. We've got kind of a forward-looking episode, piggybacking off of our episode, kind of recapping 2022 and kind of looking at future EV trends for 2023, what we think is going to happen. But we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit today and talk about just some EV technology in general that kind of we've seen, articles about or people are touting as the next big thing in EVs, and we're going to kind of give our thoughts on those. So,
yes, we're fast forwarding to the future. Is it going to be this year, next year? Which year is it going to be?
Yeah, exactly.
We're not sure, but I mean, all the topics that we have on our list have been talked about for many years, and
Right.
some of them are implemented right now. And
Yep.
I'm excited to dive further into this.
Yeah, is there
So-
one you want to start with?
I think wireless charging. I think I want to start with that
Okay.
because that's been touted for many years, and I know companies have come in and out with different products. There's been a lot of talks about like testing like wireless charging roads, like either in Europe or like I believe in Detroit they have like a test area for wireless charging.
Yeah, I've seen some stuff on that.
Yeah. I know we've talked briefly about wireless charging in some previous episodes, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so first off, fun fact.
Just dive right in.
Do you know where wireless charging was first implemented in like a commercial sense?
Phones.
No, it wasn't phones
No?
actually.
What? Oh. I'm gonna just go
It's
off
a
the wind.
consumer. It's a
Toothbrushes.
What'd you say?
Toothbrushes?
You're right. Yeah, it is toothbrushes.
Really?
Actually. Yeah.
Wow.
So I think
Oh.
it was Oral-B or Braun or like one of those like the major like toothbrush brands that make the electric toothbrushes. That's where it was first implemented.
That's crazy that I guessed that.
Yeah.
It was just kind of a wild guess.
Yeah, I did a video on
Wow.
wireless charging and EVs like a couple of years ago now. But I was researching for it and came across that. I thought that was really interesting that like toothbrushes were where it was first implemented because we think of phones now when we think of wireless charging.
Yeah. That's really interesting. So what year was that like invented or
Oh
first
gosh, I'm not
implemented?
sure. I don't have Wiki up in front of me.
Okay. Sorry.
We'll let people look that up on their own.
Yes, this is not living toothbrush. This is living electric. So.
But yeah, toothbrushes is where it was first implemented, which is really interesting. As we know today, like phones are probably where it's the biggest application right now. We've got wireless charging pads, we've got wireless charging standards. It's all kind of coming together for phones and smaller electronics. And a lot of people think that can be applied to, big electronics now with EVs. We've got these huge batteries. Wireless charging is kind of the next natural step, I think, in charging. I think it makes a lot of sense for convenience, especially because I know you and I both, we've tried out a lot of charging stations. Some of them, like, it's hard to even plug in your car depending on how it's installed or cord lengths or whatever else. And wireless charging can make a lot of sense for that. My mind immediately jumps to people that are handicapped that might not be able to plug in their car. That's really easy to just either pull in your garage or pull up to a station. The car just starts charging. You don't even need to get out. So that could be really helpful. So I think there are some applications where it makes sense. My biggest thing, being an engineer, is the efficiency of wireless charging is significantly less than wired charging. That's the biggest downside of wireless charging. Not as big a deal in phones, obviously. You can put your phone on the charging pad. It's not a big deal if you lose a little bit of energy trying to charge your phone. You're probably losing like less than a cent of electricity. But charging a car, a lot more power, a lot more expensive. You're talking dollars or $10 sometimes, depending on the wireless charging application. So granted, it could go a lot of ways. That efficiency can be improved. We saw Apple with MagSafe, where it locks into place and actually centers it up. That can improve efficiency a lot. There's a lot of other things you can do to improve efficiency, but that's immediately kind of my dig at wireless charging, if you will, is the efficiency wise, it's hard to get around those losses. So that's my thoughts, at least.
Well, so I do have a question regarding that. So obviously, we're aware of Hevo Charge. I believe that's their full name, or I always just call them Hevo. But I think, well, I was made aware of them before Fully Charged Live and, back in September of 2022. It's so weird to be like back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was last year. but like after like diving more into like their technology and like what they're looking to go to market with, based on like your research, have you noticed any efficiency improvements over like the past year? Like I haven't, or like the past few years, I haven't really dove too much into it yet, so I don't really have a comment on that, but I'm just curious if you've seen anything.
Yeah, I haven't dug into it too deep, and I'm not too familiar with their like specific product, but it's just a kind of a theoretical limit or a limitation of wireless charging in general. Like you are never going to reach wired charging efficiency with wireless charging. Like it's physically impossible. Granted, crazier things have been done, so it could get to a point where it's hyper efficient. It really works well, and losses are completely minimal, like similar to what you would get through a wire. But right now, I don't think the tech is quite there yet. But I'm definitely I'm interested to see where it goes. I think there are some fun applications for it, but I mean, there's a reason we still plug our phones in. There's a reason we still plug electronics in. It's because it's the fastest way to charge things, and it's the best way to charge things right now still. So
yeah, I'm just like, I definitely, I want to get Jeremy from Hevo, their CEO, on our podcast, because I would love to like have a conversation and learn more about it. Because I totally agree with you with the accessibility standpoint.
Right.
For people, like we just recently checked out an EVgo station, and like the Chatamo, like the blue connector, the cable is thick. It's huge. And and if you have any type of, like maybe like muscle weakness or like any, inability to lift heavy objects, you're going to have a very hard time plugging in your vehicle.
Yeah.
And, that's where Tesla really does it right. But like even then you still have to reach up to grab a cable.
Yeah.
So like if you can't do that physically, you're kind of, out of luck. So like that's where I'm excited to see improvements in that aspect, where it just makes it easier for just everybody, especially people who need it for accessibility reasons.
Right. And I'm all about making charging easier. I think as we've seen over the past year, like making charging more accessible, easier to use is definitely like a big thing. So I think any advancements there, I'm definitely open to hearing about, or definitely we need to keep researching. So
yeah, I think the one thing with wireless charging that like I get it, like if you pull a vehicle onto like a wireless charging pad and it sits there similar to like what you might be sitting at, like either like a fast charger or a standard charger, then yeah, I'm curious to know how that works. But I think my only doubts lie with like the wireless highways, or like the charging highways.
Yeah,
I don't fully grasp the idea of you're going 70 miles per hour, you're utilizing electricity to drive. Wouldn't it just cancel each other out? Like, I'm not exactly sure how that would work. I'm not an engineer, but like, I just, from like a simple mindset, I'm just like, oh, that just seems like it would kind of cancel each other out. But,
Yeah. Usually one of the big problems with that is just like charging while you're also using something. So like batteries are not designed to like charge and discharge at the same time, if that makes sense. So like, that's why like you're not really supposed to use your phone while it's plugged in, because it's kind of like it can be discharging and charging at the same time. There's some weird stuff that goes on. So yeah, that's usually like the part of the problem with that. But with the roads, there's a few ways to do it, because there's like, we've seen electric rail before, where like the train gets its power from the rail, so there might be like some ways to do that. But I think getting something that's like any EV with the like correct standard or whatever could just drive onto this road and instantly like essentially drive under that power. It'd be really interesting to see, but I've got to do some more research on that. I think you said Detroit or Michigan is working on a like test patch where they're working on something like that. So I'm curious how they're going about it. I haven't read up on it too much. So
yeah, that was a long time ago when I read about that. So, but now I'm like, all I'm picturing is like the turbo patch in Mario Kart. Like, that's all I'm picturing. It's just a mile of just
that's what we need.
Acceleration. Yeah, right. Rainbow Road. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think I need to dig further into wireless charging before I can like make like an official like comment on it.
Yeah.
But I want to learn from the people who are involved with it, people who are day in and day out, making it better for drivers. So I'm going to get Hevo on the podcast.
Yeah,
so
that'd be cool to check out.
Yeah.
So you just got to experience FSD beta, right? So do you want to
Yes.
talk about kind of where we think self-driving is headed, or quote unquote full self-driving, as I'm calling it?
Yes. So well, we first when did you experience FSD beta?
It's been a few months now. I think it was over the summer. One of my buddies has it, so I got to ride with him and try it out. Which it did not last long. We turned it off, I think, within 5 or 6 minutes, because his wife was in the car and she's like, "Turn that off, please." So
That's great. Yeah, we got a chance to experience it in San Diego back in September, when we were in Zach. Well, I'm just gonna give him a shout out because he's huge within the EV community. Black Model 3 on Twitter. He took us to the airport, and it was our first time experiencing it, and it was rough. It was nighttime. I don't think the cameras saw very well. But the thing is if you're a Tesla fan, you probably know the different versions. And my friend Andrew, who we rode in his vehicle with this past weekend, knows all the versions too. So I can't tell you which version we got a chance to ride in, but it was the very latest one. It wasn't 11, because I know that's not out yet. It was one of the more recent builds.
Gotcha.
And it did really well. We recorded a video for Everyday EV, and I was blown away by how well it did. Like, it handled very complex intersections. It only freaked out one other driver. Well, actually, no, there was 2 examples where a Camry went around us because it couldn't figure out what we were doing. But what was most impressive about this is that there's a 4-lane road by us that has a massive median in the middle between like each lanes, and each direction is one way. So like you have to go through the median to get to the other lane. And the Tesla handled it flawlessly. Like, it blew my mind that it did that. Even I struggled trying to go through some of those intersections. So I'm like, that's awesome. Now, there were some problems where, it lost some lane markings. It couldn't exactly figure out where it was going. It can't read signs right now. It's mainly just going by shapes and colors. So it kind of struggled with some of the more complex intersections. So to get back to your question about full self-driving, I think we're getting there, but the thing is that I don't truly believe that it's going to be just based on camera or like a vision setup. There's going to have to be radar, there's going to have to be LiDAR, there's going to have to be, seamless data connection, streaming GPS coordinates directly to the vehicle at all times. And it's just going to have to be the seamless ecosystem to work. Yeah. And we're getting there, the technology's getting there, but I don't think it's going to be for a very long time.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think definitely on the kind of sensor and camera part, it's like, I don't think cameras are going to be the only sensor we need for full self-driving. Case in point, I'm sure you've seen it as well. You probably keep your car a little bit cleaner than I do, but car is
that's a lie.
Okay.
Not recently.
Yeah. I was going to say, with all the slush and snow and sleet we've had recently, it's been bad. And anytime I get in the car, even after I wipe off the cameras, as soon as I take another drive, all the cameras are cloudy. Anytime I use my backup camera, it's just covered in sleet and gross stuff. So it's quickly just getting covered in stuff. And it's I don't think as soon as a sensor goes bad, you're kind of screwed. That is your one way to see. It's like being blind. You can't drive if you can't see. So that part is a concern. But also just the weird mistakes sometimes on regular autopilot, I see random phantom braking, or it'll think a lane is going this way or that way. And it's still all these things need supervision, which I think is fine. It's still a good tool. I use it all the time, but I don't think anytime soon it's going to get to the point where it's you don't have to touch the wheel, and you don't have to pay attention. I know some of these are Ford's Blue Cruise, some of these others are getting to the point where they're you don't need to touch the wheel, but you still need to keep your eyes on the road. So it's all right, we're kind of getting there. But I mean, my favorite thing is the compilations people have made of Elon Musk saying, "Oh yeah, we'll have full self-driving coast to coast by the end of next year," and he's been saying it for 7 years straight. So
yes, yeah,
it's I think when I kind of first got into the industry and first started following Tesla, I wanted to believe it, but I'm I think we're both at the point I don't know about that.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I was working for Tesla when they came out with the refreshed Model S with all the cameras, and they said that this computer is going to be able to handle full self-driving, and they're like, recently, well, we're working on another full self-driving
computer.
Like,
yeah.
And it's like, I know that stuff is hard to develop. It's very hard, but like at some point it's just be like, to be announced. TBA.
Yeah.
But you mentioned Blue Cruise, and I do want to highlight we have experience with Super Cruise, GM's hands-free cruise control. And so we have experience with Super Cruise Lite. That's what I call it, because the Bolt EUV doesn't have the same full, Super Cruise suite that like the Hummer EV does, and like some of the more high-end GM products.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't. It was more like an adaptive cruise control setup with like lane keep assist. You could still keep your hands off the wheel, and it did very well. But the thing that bothered me the most is that it would turn off without any warning. Like it would just because on the steering wheel there's like a string of LED lights, and when it's green, that means it's on. When it's blue, that typically means like it's still centering itself, or like you're going into a different lane. And then when it's red, that means you have to take control. But it literally will just flash red and turn off immediately without any warning. So if you don't have your hands on the wheel, it'll get there. Things will get better.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's such a moving target too, because like as soon as you fix one problem, another one pops up. It's like it's a really hard problem to solve, and like the world is messy, and things are constantly changing. Road markings are constantly changing. Mm-hmm. You mentioned like the what did you say? Like, did you say car communication too? Like with the other cars, like telling, So I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast before, but my senior capstone project was actually working on kind of learning about that standard for vehicle-to-vehicle communication.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
So we basically like read the whole standard, like looked into it all. And our goal was to basically do some sort of security attack on the system that like went between the two cars. It was like, we were not at that point yet because we were undergrad students. So we basically made this like little animation that showed we could like basically send a signal from some random spot on the road telling these two cars that there's a random car like in the middle of the intersection or the middle of the road they're trying to go to. So like it wasn't physically there, but in their computer systems they would recognize it as a car there. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, so you could kind of like spoof a real car being sitting in the road thinking that it was there. But exactly what you said, basically there's a standard that says vehicle to vehicle, it's basically like your cell phone is constantly blasting out like its coordinates, its steering wheel position, its speed, like all of this stuff, so you know exactly where the car is now, where it might be headed, where the wheel is pointing, like all of this stuff. So you get a lot of really cool information to see like what type of vehicle is headed towards you or near you, even though you might not physically see it, which I think is crazy. Like,
wow.
I think that's really like when we'll get to future mode where it's like, we have planes flying around that can't see through the fog, like physically, but know where all the other planes are. Like, that is the point we need to get to.
Oh, yeah.
So the problem is
amazing.
You can do that in the air pretty easily because there's not a lot of other stuff in the air. There's a lot of other stuff on the ground. So it's like you still need those maps. Like as soon as somebody walks across the road, they might be in danger if it's foggy. Like all of this stuff can get really complicated. But I think highways maybe could get to the point where that's where we're at. But I still think city driving is just so hard to solve.
It's so complicated. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, we have like Cruise and like Waymo who are doing like very good jobs. Like when I was in Phoenix last year, I got a chance to see some of the Waymo like I-Paces driving around.
Oh,
and it
nice!
Was so cool. Like they were doing very well for like being in a congested downtown metro area. I was pretty impressed with that. But I mean, I think we should do a whole episode about connected vehicles because, as you mentioned, the cybersecurity issue could be a big problem for full self-driving car.
Right. Exactly.
But we'll find a cybersecurity professional. We'll get somebody.
Right.
Yes. So, what are your thoughts on? I'm looking at the list. Let's talk about plug and charge. Let's jump back to charging.
Yeah.
Because I think we should also talk about roaming across different charging networks and like having access through. I'm assuming essentially like one mobile app that would
Right.
allow you to initialize a charge on multiple networks.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Have you
do you want to
used
start?
roaming at all before when you've been charging?
So I've activated a charge point station using EVgo,
Okay.
like EVgo's app before, but that was it.
Okay.
But like I've seen where they have like the different networks listed within their mobile apps.
Yeah. That's essentially all roaming is right now. Is all of these networks kind of have agreements in place where it's like, hey, we will agree to list your stations on our app as long as you do the same on your app. So it's kind of you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours situation. So it's kind of just I don't know. There's some gain from it on both sides. So networks are incentivized to do it. I'm hoping that's not the future where we have like, oh, there's like 30 different apps and just choose your favorite network or the app you like best. And then they have roaming agreements with everybody and you can activate any station from there. Like I'd like stations to be a lot easier to use than that. So I think roaming is going to kind of slowly go away as we get into full plug and charge, which is going to be like, I've talked about it before, the full vehicle to charger communication. You got vehicle to grid communication. Like a lot of stuff is on that standard, and it just makes things significantly easier. You don't even have to swipe a credit card, or like you basically just tie your credit card to your car, and then your car tells the station what to charge or what payment method to use. So way simpler. I think that's definitely the direction we're headed. In terms of timeline for that, I think it's still probably 5 or more years out till everybody's using it, but that's just me.
Yeah.
I think we're going to start seeing it next year, like this year though, 2023.
Yeah. Yeah. I really hope that, we start seeing like network, like, like manufacturers of like charging stations start implementing that engineering standard at their stations. I mean, like I know EVgo kind of has that workaround with their auto charge, and it actually works. We've used auto charge about 5 times now, and every single time it's been 100% success.
Isn't it great?
And it normally starts a charge in under 30 seconds, which is it's amazing. So I just hope that like these other manufacturers and networks who make it super complicated to start a charge start jumping on board. But then the automakers need to start doing the same things too. But like if EVgo can do it with like a list of vehicles that technically do not have that plug and charge standard, like the Ioniq 5 and the EV6, what's stopping the rest of the other networks from doing that? So I just simplicity and things that are just reliable and work. I'm a big fan of.
Yeah.
So.
And I think you're exactly right with the vehicle OEMs need to get on board and be like, hey, our vehicles support this. And I think just as consumers, as car buyers, need to be educated that like if this car doesn't have this feature, then like charging is going to be difficult moving forward. Like it's still going to be a pain in the ass. So
well, and the thing is oh, go ahead. Sorry, Alex.
I think just having that ability in the app to link your credit card, link your payment method or whatever to your physical car, like that's going to be really valuable.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I like, like you mentioned, like I really hope that they start jumping on board, like, and the thing is that like a lot of these EVs are so new for manufacturers that they like and OEMs that they want to receive feedback from consumers. So, for example, like the Ioniq 5 didn't have battery preconditioning for 2022. And it does for 2023 because enough people responded and complained about slow charging rates.
Right.
So they have it now for the new vehicles, but 2022 will receive a software update to allow for battery preconditioning.
Oh, good. Okay.
Before fast charging. So it's like if you provide that feedback to the OEMs, hopefully they'll listen and start implementing that. Like,
definitely.
Yeah. But in terms of like roaming and like having it just be housed under one app, I really hope we get there as well. But as we know from working in the industry, all these businesses like to do their own thing, know, and if you want to do it ethically in terms of getting access to a network's data, you're going to have to work directly with them. And some companies do not really respond well to that. But let's just hope it gets there. I have a feeling, honestly, I do have a feeling the federal government will step in and start saying that, like, if this is how we're moving forward, you can still be a private business and make money, but you need to allow access to your data in some, form. So
that is a requirement for a lot of the NEVI funds.
mm-hmm.
Is for any new charger going in, like you need to provide data to the state agency, which in most cases is the State Department of Transportation. That's going to list it somewhere. I'm not sure where, but they're going to at least have access. Yeah. They're at least going to have access to that data. So that'll be good.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I
think
in the right direction.
Right. And I think a lot of vehicle OEMs are going to head the direction of Ford's like Blue Oval network, where it's not a physical network, which I think confuses a lot of people, which is, I still think it's a little disingenuous to say it's like the largest EV charging network, which is like, kind of. Yeah. Where basically you would just, if you do need to use the app to activate charges, you're going to do it through the vehicle app, where it's like, all right, I'm at this charger, I need to activate this station, like I'll do it through my car's app. So
yeah.
Again, I think cutting down on apps is a good thing, but I think these networks are still gonna these networks and kind of we're still gonna have some interoperability somewhere. So.
Oh yes, yeah, it'll get there. I'm having flashbacks of using the My Chevy app in the Bolt and like starting things through Apple CarPlay, and it worked, and then they revoked it. So I'm not sure what happened there. So I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah.
I will say car apps as a whole like need to get way better if this is the direction we're headed.
Yeah, and I will say, after being a Tesla owner for almost a year, Tesla needs to really work on their app as well in terms of like when the vehicle actually connects to the app. I don't know if you have the issue, but I always run into the issue where it takes forever for the vehicle to wake up and provide like an update to the app. It drives me nuts. Like it takes me like 10 minutes to precondition my vehicle.
Oh, really?
It takes forever. So I don't know if there's something going on with our vehicle or what, but...
Is that everywhere or just when you're at home?
It's when I'm at home, out, at Costco, for example, but,
That's
just
really
out and
weird.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, I usually have that issue at home because Sentry mode is off, so like the vehicle's asleep, it's not doing anything, so it takes longer to connect to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, out and about, generally, it's not too bad. But you're right, like sometimes I'll be walking like out of the store or like out of the parking lot. I want to click the precondition button and then it won't connect to the car and I get into a cold car. So total first world problems. I don't know how we're going to survive.
Yeah, right? Yeah, we'll do a whole episode on connected vehicles. I think that would be a really cool one.
Definitely.
Yeah. So what should we talk about now?
I think solar powered EVs I have some thoughts on.
Okay.
I'm curious your thoughts first, though. Like, why? This is a question I get all the time. Is like, why don't they start putting the solar panels on top of EVs? Like, why?
Why?
We've got solar power. We got electric cars. Make it work.
Yeah. Well, so I guess my opinion about solar powered vehicles, like, I don't think that solar panels should be fully relied on to charge the high voltage battery pack. Like I'm going to say that in simple ways, like the main battery pack. Like I understand if like solar was used to keep the vehicle cool on a hot summer day, or like to power like the auxiliary, the accessories, or what I'm trying to say, like like the radio and like some of the other electronics. I'm struggling, it's late. But like I understand like that kind of implementation, but like I don't necessarily know if we're at the point where solar panels are efficient enough to charge your vehicle as quick as it would be to plug your vehicle in overnight. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know if you could leave your car sitting out for 8 hours throughout the day and you would go from, 10 to 80% or something like that. Like, right. I don't know how that would work, but
yeah. I think it's something like I've thought about. It would be cool to retrofit on my own car, because there's some times where it's like, oh, I'm going to my family's house, or I'm going somewhere where I don't have like great level 2 charging. It would be great just to be able to like trickle charge my car without plugging it in. Like as soon as I put it in park, it just charges based on the solar panels. And I've done some. You mentioned the Lightyear 1 in the pre-show, and I looked into that before I did a video on that car, and like theoretically you might not have to plug that vehicle in ever if you're parking your car outside all the time and like you're just using it for commuting. Like there are, I think, some situations where solar on top of cars makes sense. In some background, like the reason we don't put them on cars now is because generally it's like a cost benefit thing. Generally, it costs way more to put solar on a car. Like it would probably add 10 to 15,000 like on top of the car, which sounds way more than it should be for just like a little solar panel. But like the electronics to integrate it, like the engineering work that goes into it, just like a lot of work to get this small little thing that might trickle charge your car if you have it sitting outside. Might give you an extra like 2 or 3 miles an hour in the direct sunlight. So like very, very small based on how much like surface area is on the car. So, but yeah, it's something I think it would be cool to have as like an option though. I think for people that want it. Sure. Like it's definitely something I would check out as like an energy and electrical nerd. So
yeah. Yeah, I think they look cool. I mean, I definitely think that they would have their purpose. I just don't know if the panels are efficient enough. Like that I guess that was more of an extreme example that I mentioned of like doing like an overnight charge. But if you can get 50 miles if your vehicle's sitting out, that essentially would cover most people's commute, you know?
Right.
Yeah. But I just like, I think for me, I still am so like, I'm learning so much about like solar and like, you know, like how energy production works and like, you know, energy efficiency that like I don't have an opinion or at least the knowledge to provide an opinion.
Yeah.
But I'm just kind of going based off of what I've previously seen. But all those implementations have been from like old Priuses and like Nissan Leafs and stuff like that. So
yeah, because the Prius or Nissan Leaf, didn't one of them have like a solar panel that powered, like kept the cabin cool, like when it was hot out or something?
Yeah, the Leaf did. And I think the new Prius that they just announced will have a solar roof as well.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, to do things like that. And actually, I do know that the Sonata Hybrid, not here in the actually, no, I think here in the United States you can get a solar roof to charge the battery pack. Even though it's not like a plug-in, it would still at least charge the battery pack on board. So
gotcha.
Yeah. There's a place for it, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah. So longer range EVs. Do you think we need to go 1,000 miles on a full charge?
Yes, I'm towing a 100,000-pound RV. I need to be able to tow it. I thought of this like right before we started the show, but like, do we need longer range EVs? Like, I think we've seen with Tesla, like they could make a longer range car. They just aren't. So like, and they're smart. There's a reason they're not making a longer range car. It's because people are currently buying the cars that have the range they do right now. And I think a lot of people, like myself included, like get an EV and realize how little you actually utilize the battery pack unless you're taking a long road trip. Like day to day, like my battery pack hovers, like Mallory's taking to work now, but like it hovers between 75 and 90% like most of the time. I'm only using like that much of the battery when I could like it's sitting on this huge battery. So I think I'm curious of where you fall on this, of like how much range is enough range, and like are we going to see like almost different classes of cars where it's like, I mean, we've already seen that where you can get like the long range version or the standard range version. Like we're already seeing that. But like how long are those long range versions gonna get, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So I kind of take it from the perspective that it's not exactly it's not how far you can drive. It should be about how fast you can charge. How fast can you refuel your vehicle? Because if you look at like the market, for example, like I think people really they look at EVs and they go, oh, 250 miles is not enough. But if you look at like, for example, like the BMW 3 Series plug-in, the max range with gas and electric is 320 miles combined, which is that's less than a Model 3 long range.
Right.
So, but like, I think for some people, they don't necessarily look at it in that aspect. They look at it in the fueling aspect. So I think if your vehicle can go 500 plus miles, but it can only charge at a certain rate, that's going to change your entire experience. Sure, you can drive, but when you stop at a charger, is it going to take an hour and a half? Or is it going to take 20 minutes? So I kind of take it from that perspective. And I think what people really need to do is just experience it. I think, like, as you mentioned, you get into an EV and you think, oh, 350 miles, yeah, that's a good number. And then as you start driving, you're like, oh my God, I'm only using like 5-10% of my range, typically
Right.
on average.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a matter of experience. But I, I don't necessarily think we need to start seeing 600 plus mile range EVs. I think the sweet spot is between 300 and 500. But even the 250s or less, not extremely less. The Mini Cooper, 114 miles, that is a bit iffy. You can absolutely do it.
Yeah.
But I think the bare minimum has to be around 250. And then I think people would be comfortable. That's almost what a Honda Civic can do. Honda Civic still maxes out at about 300 miles range. But you can fuel up in 5 minutes. So that's where it's like the trade-off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in complete agreement. I didn't even think about that perspective. So thanks for bringing that up, because I was like, yeah, I'm thinking on my end, like my answer would be like, oh yeah, like we definitely want longer range cars, but great points that like why are people wanting longer range cars? It's because they think charging is going to take longer, or they are concerned about charging. Like that is a function of the charging network. It is not a like function of cars. Because if you ask most people how much range they can get on their gas car, they A, might not know, or B, might like it's probably pretty comparable to some of the EVs on the market. So I think you're exactly right. Like we've got to kind of reframe that conversation in a way to be like, hey, yeah, these cars can go as far as you need them to go. The charging network just needs to, keep up. And if it is a lower range car makers need to design them with faster charging in mind. So, case in point, the Ioniq 5 and EV6, like both extremely fast charging cars, but I think both have like around 300 miles of range. Like they're no crazy long range cars, but great for road tripping still because they've got super fast charging. So or is it ultra fast? I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like we're gonna say that in every episode. I think it's hyper fast. I'm not sure. But yeah, that's just like the perspective I take. Like I think if people started taking their, like, especially if they're new to an EV or they're shopping for an EV, go look at your gas vehicle, see what the range is if your vehicle shows you in like a number, in a full tank, and compare it to what the EV you're shopping at, and just be mindful, because your vehicle, you'd be surprised at how far these vehicles can drive. And another argument I always bring up too, how many times do you drive 9-10 hours straight? So you don't, you will at some point, I'm sure, but like the majority of people, they don't drive that long. So
right.
That's such a tough thing. I don't know. I think like if it allows people to feel comfortable with getting an EV, sure, let's bring out longer range EVs. I don't think it's fully necessary.
The few reasons I think it's necessary is what you just mentioned, is just getting people comfortable with them. I think as soon as people drive a super long range EV and they're like, oh, I never go below 200 miles. It's like it's like getting a big battery on like a phone or a laptop. You're like, oh, I just leave my laptop plugged in all the time. It doesn't even drop below 80%. So it's like similar kind of thing. Is just reframing that conversation around like, what is your charging or fueling situation like? Because I think people see that, oh, my tank has 450 miles, but you're like, okay, but you're still stopping, every 2 weeks to go to the gas station and fuel up your car. Whereas like with an EV, you never have to go to the gas station and your tank never drops below, 280 miles on the range meter or whatever. So I think it's just kind of framing that conversation. But the second thing would be, towing is still a factor as well. So I think if you are somebody, we say this in all our shows, is like, buy the EV that fits your lifestyle. So like if you are somebody that's towing or live in really cold temperatures with all of these things that really affect EV range, I think having that buffer helps a ton. So I think you're right. Like the 500 end is super helpful, because even if you're towing, it's cold, all that stuff, you're still, even if it drops in half, you're still at 250. So like, I mean, you're still getting the job done.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's a great point. Especially like if like semi trucks, for example, like I know that's not like a light duty vehicle, But like, yeah, that makes sense for long range EVs. But yeah, if you have like an F-150 Lightning, you know, towing, I don't know, like a 5,000 pound trailer or something like that, you're gonna want as much range as you can, you know,
Right.
as you can get.
Definitely. So
Yeah. I like that conversation. That was a good one.
That was a good one. All right, you want to do any more? Or you want to wrap up here? I know we're 40 minutes in right now, so
Yeah, no, I think we're good.
okay.
I do want to put it on the audience and see if they have any ideas for future EV technology, any opinions on the conversations we've had today. Definitely would love to hear about them, and hopefully we can cover them in a future episode. Emphasis on future.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, definitely looking forward to hear from you, and we'll catch you in the next episode.